Bear with me for just a second as I load up the PowerPoint on the shared screen. All right, and if I remember correctly, I have to. All right, do you see just the presentation now?
Yes.
Perfect. Oops, sorry. Have to do one other thing. I apologize. Multiple screens, pros and cons. Are you seeing the PowerPoint or the presenter mode?
PowerPoint.
Perfect. Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Kaitlyn Gawet. I am the Regional Prevention Partnership Coordinator working through Rutland Regional. And with me today, co-presenting is Sarah Roy and Sarah Cosgrove. So I'm going to allow you both to introduce yourselves.
Hi, all. Sarah Roy, Department of Health, Alcohol and Drug Abuse Programs. I do substance use prevention for the Department of Health, Alcohol and Drug Abuse Programs. Thanks for coming.
Hello, I'm Sarah Cosgrove, and I'm a respiratory therapist and tobacco treatment specialist working on the tobacco control grant for Rutland Regional. Thank you.
Thank you both. All right, so if we could just go around, Sarah Roy, can you just call on people, have you guys say your name and what organization, school, or community group you're with? And then again, just keep in the back of your mind, what does prevention mean to you?
Perfect. So I'm going on my screen. So Betty, you're first.
Hi, Betty Hughes, School Counselor, Allen Street Campus for Rutland Middle and High School.
Thank you. Mary, you're next.
Hi, I'm Mary Fans. I'm the program coordinator at Black River Area Community Coalition.
Thanks, Mary. And Stephanie, I've got you going.
I'm Stephanie Roach. I'm a wellness coach at Rutland Regional Medical Center with the multi-specialty clinics.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephanie. And Jamie, you're next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Bentley. I'm the Community Impact Coordinator with Rutland Regional Medical Center.
Perfect. Thank you, Jamie. And last but not least, Heather, you're the last one. You're muted, Heather, if you're trying to talk.
Her computer sometimes struggles with sound, so give her a second and then move on. I will introduce Heather. So Heather Earlyard is our tobacco and self-management coordinator for Rutland Regional. She is a new hire and we are very excited to have her on board.
Thanks, Sarah, for stepping in. We got you, Heather.
All right, so again, keep in the back of your mind, what does prevention mean to you? So just a quick review or overview of what we're going to do. We're going to talk about, we're going to do a quick knowledge check and pretest. We're going to talk about prevention and brain basics, cover alcohol, cannabis, tobacco, and vaping, and then cover some ways that you can help. And of course, leave room at the end for any questions you might have. So first, we're going to do a quick poll. Let me know if y'all can't see it for some reason. So we're just gonna wait a couple more seconds. All right, perfect. So we will go over all the answers to these polling questions throughout, so keep your ears open for those answers. All right, so first, for those of you who were present at our first presentation, we really kind of went in depth on, prevention tactics and some brain basics and why prevention is important. So we found this awesome video from Addiction Policy Forum that kind of summarizes everything we went over. So if you didn't make it to the first one, don't worry, you are not going to be behind.
What is addiction? It's also called a substance use disorder. Over 20 million people nationwide suffer from addiction. 1 in 7 people will experience addiction at some point in their life. Scientists first began to understand addiction as a brain disorder back in the 1950s. Doctors Olds and Milner, in laboratory studies of rats, found the parts of the brain affected by addiction. But then in 1994, Doctors Volkoff and Shelbert, top neuroscientists, ran PET scans of the brain that showed the effects of substance use disorders. And like other diseases, these scans showed it affected tissue function. So there are 2 main parts of the brain affected by drug use: the limbic system and the cortex. The limbic system, located deep within the brain, is responsible for our basic survival instincts. So when you do essential things to stay alive, like eat, drink, find shelter, build relationships, or care for your young, your brain reinforces behaviors that cause the release of dopamine from this region. That reward for surviving is also transmitted to the amygdala and hippocampus, which records a memory of that feeling, so we seek it again. This is our survival hardwiring. Addiction also affects this area, up here. That's the prefrontal cortex, which is what separates us from other animals. And this is where decision-making and impulse control live. When drugs or alcohol are used, they activate the very same dopamine process in the survival center. And when use is repeated, that substance can hijack that part of the brain. This hijacker changes the brain and weakens this system to make it believe that the primary need for survival is the drug. In hijacking the brain, it can usurp those primary motivations: food, water, shelter, relationships, and protecting our young. And the hijacker needs more and more of the substance to activate the same level of reward or feeling of pleasure, causing the brain tissue to become increasingly damaged with continued drug use. So why don't all people who use alcohol or drugs become addicted? There are factors that contribute to the development of a substance use disorder. They include individual factors like your genes, your age of exposure, and then environmental factors like drug availability. But there is good news. Addiction is preventable. Key factors that aid in preventing addiction can be categorized into 2 parts: risk factors and protective factors. Protective factors range from parental involvement, programs that improve self-control, limiting availability, and increasing attachment to your community. Another key element in preventing substance use disorders is to delay when use begins. Put simply, prevention is about delaying the onset of first use. In the adolescent brain, where brain tissue is more vulnerable, the hijacker is more prone to weaken the brain and plant itself as a disease. Those with substance use disorders commonly initiate first use much earlier, between 12 and 18 years old, which increases the likelihood of the hijacker taking hold. But if the hijacker does take hold, addiction is treatable. Advancements have been made in assessments, treatment programs, recovery supports, and medications to treat addiction. Brain scans show that once in recovery, the tissue in the limbic system and cortex can get better. With your help, we can expand these innovations to help millions of individuals and families and ensure that addiction is treated as the medical issue that it is. Together, we can solve this. Join us. What is addiction?
Awesome. All right. So we really just wanted to kind of share that video as an opportunity just to kind of reiterate some of those points that prevention really is about delaying that onset of substance use and, giving that brain a chance to fully develop. So I am going to pass it over to Sarah Roy. First, we're going to do a quick poll and see what you know about alcohol. Give it one more second. Awesome. So in the following slides, Sarah Roy is going to go over the results. So I will let her take it away.
Thanks, Kaitlyn. So on the odd years in our state, we do what's called the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. So that question that was just asked in the poll came from that data. So you can go to the next slide. And we ask our youth in grade, this is just specifically to high school, grades 9 through 12, but we also do a middle school survey, which is 6th through 8th grade. And we get them to self-report their substance use information and their health information. So the question asked from the poll, it was around what percentage of youth drink alcohol in the past 30 days. So if you look at this slide, we show the grades 9 through 12. Rutland County is in the blue and Vermont is in the green. F is for female, M is for male. WNH means white non-Hispanic. SOC is students of color. We also are starting to add our sexual orientation, so heterosexual and LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and then all, which would be our overall students for the 9th through 12th grade. So our data for Rutland County would be that 31% of our students in 9th through 12th grade report they drank on 1 or more days in the past 30 days. As you can see, it steps up from 9th through 12th grade. In Rutland County specifically, if you look at our 9th graders, we were at 24% of them reporting drinking compared to the state at 19, which is not something that we want to see. The video that was just shared talking about delaying the onset, if we can delay our youth from even trying substances until the age of 21, it would be better off for their health and overall well-being. But as you can see, by the time they're seniors in high school, nearly 40% of them have reported that they had a drink of alcohol on 1 or more days in the past 30 days. We definitely have higher rates too for our LGBT population, and we have a great focus on that population for our county through the Regional Prevention Partnerships funding. We're looking at that piece and how we can help provide some more education and information as well. Next slide. So the other question was around binge drinking that you answered. So what percentage of youth binge drink in the past 30 days? Similar slide, as you can see, and overall 15% of our students reported binge drinking. And we define that binge drinking as having, for an adult, it would be 4 or more drinks in a sitting for a woman and 5 or more drinks for a man. So these would be, binge drinking for youth is definitely a high risk situation. Again, our 9th graders are reporting 10% of them binge drank in the past 30 days. And the survey actually gives them the definition of binge drink when they take it. And up to 25% in the state are reporting that as seniors in high school. If you can see the LGBTQ, that population is reporting 20% of them for Rutland County drank in the past 30 days, which is definitely an alarming level. And we don't want to see that piece to it. So we've done a great job in our state around our alcohol piece to educating our youth about this and about the risks. And if we had showed you the other slides that pertain to this, especially when they talk about risk, we can see that they believe there's harm to drinking and that they shouldn't do it at specific levels. But that harm actually goes down, their belief in the harm goes down as they get older in their years. And we know that's the peer influence piece to it. So those protective factors about having an individual that's supportive of them, having parents that actually say, we don't approve of your underage drinking, those are good protective factors. But the risk factors of peer influence are definitely out there for this population. Next slide. This just goes into understanding the different drinking levels. And this can be different depending on the age. These are based off of what we consider a healthy adult. So moderate drinking, 1 drink a day for women, up to 2 drinks per men. Binge drinking, which I mentioned, is 4 and 5. Heavy drinking, 8 or more drinks per week for women and 15 or more for men. And then it gets into the alcohol use disorder. So that would be people that are diagnosed with having a substance use disorder and needing that more alcohol in order to reach a certain level in their drinking. Again, these are for people who are of age. We don't want to see any of this for our underage use, so anybody under the age of 21. But this just helps define what we're talking about when we say different binge drinking, heavy drinking. And these come from the NIAAA, the National Institute on Alcohol and Abuse. And I forgot what the third A is. So NIAAA, information at the bottom, which is great to have. So those who are medically diagnosed with an alcohol use disorder, that's something through the diagnostical and statistical manual. And that's somebody that's going to be on the treatment side to it. So not anything that we have on our prevention piece. The biggest takeaway and what it was even in the video and what we talked about in the first part, delaying the onset. So we know that youth who begin drinking alcohol before the age 15 are 5 times more likely to develop alcohol problems than those who start after the age of 21. As you can see, this came out in 2004 that they found this piece to it. And they initially thought it was 4 times more likely, and then they increased it to 5 times more likely. And this is a big piece. We want to delay that onset. We know that alcohol is a depressant in that it might make them feel better, but their issues are still going to be there after they've drank to try to minimize what they're going through. So we want to be able to say delaying it is the best thing that we can do right now for our youth and our vulnerable youth. And I'm thinking specifically of the video from the Prevention 101 that Kaitlyn showed about jumbling up the keyboard. We want to have their brain faculties the best that they can be as they're developing and growing, and keeping it that way, and to really delay that onset until they're of an age to be able to make a better decision. I'm all set.
Thanks, Sarah. So now we're going to move on to cannabis, in which case, you guessed it, we have another poll. Just one question this time, though. Awesome. All right. So again, as I talk, we'll go over the results of this question. All right. So similar to how Sarah just described it for alcohol, again, they discuss marijuana is the word they use in the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and we'll go into the difference between marijuana and cannabis next. But again, blue is Rutland County, green is the state as a whole. So you can see that pretty much across the board, we're either at the state level or above for Rutland County statistics for 30-day use. With marijuana and cannabis becoming legal for those 21 and older, it has definitely shown an increase in youth use. So again, similar to what Sarah said, we want to delay that onset, let their brains develop, and really give them the best chance that they have prior to kind of scrambling that keyboard and substance use if they do use. So one of the questions was true or false, cannabis and marijuana mean the same thing. So it's false. So cannabis refers to all products that come from this specific plant here, and that's the National Institute on Health is where this information came from. And then marijuana specifically talks about the parts of the plant that have the THC. So THC is that chemical that creates that high and alters your state of mind. So again, for the Vermont Youth Risk Behavior Survey, you will see the word marijuana, but we are switching over now to cannabis. And so when we're doing prevention, we're talking about all products that come from that plant. So health consequences from cannabis use, again, using THC can affect, it provides that mind altering kind of high. And so again, it affects your memory, your attention, your decision making, and your motivation. And if you remember from the first presentation, your brain isn't technically considered to be fully developed until age 25. So again, that really can affect that decision making if you're using it earlier than when your brain is developed. Marijuana use can also contribute to impaired coordination, which sometimes can be linked to issues in driving and accidents, lung issues that Sarah will talk about later, especially when vaped, and then increased risk for mental health, such as depression and anxiety. So I am actually going to turn it over to Sarah Cosgrove now to talk about vaping and tobacco.
Hey guys. Well, I am here to talk about tobacco and vaping, which actually happens to be my specialty. So I do want to clarify that last slide, which mentions that there can be lung injuries similar to that of tobacco. And it's actually going to be a little bit different. And I'm going to explain that in more detail. So Kaitlyn, could you please turn to the next slide, please, for me? Do you have this loaded up that you could push play for us? Thank you. This is a video that we got online that really is really concise when you're talking about vaping and vaping devices. It's a good introductory tool to use, and it's right there on YouTube. So if you ever come across needing any of these videos to speak to other groups, please YouTube, make sure that they're coming from a credible resource, and feel free to use these that we've already vetted for you. Okay, you can play it now, Kaitlyn. Thank you.
E-cigarettes are battery-operated devices that people use to inhale or vape nicotine, flavoring, or other chemicals. They can look like cigarettes, pipes, pens, or USB memory sticks. How do vaping devices work? Vaping an e-cigarette heats up the device, which turns the liquid in the device into vapor. The person then inhales the vapor, and the flavor, or nicotine, goes into their body. For more information, go to teens.drugabuse.gov.
Okay, so, oops, that's a nice little concise message in regards to vaping devices, because right now we are in what they call the 4th generation of vaping devices. So originally they started out and they looked a lot like cigarettes. And I would say, what would that be? Probably 13 years ago they came out. Now over time, these devices have morphed into different types. So when we're talking vaping products, you might hear e-cigarettes, you might hear vapes, you may hear someone say vape pens, dab rings, tanks, mods, pods, and ends. And when we say ENDS, those are the electronic nicotine delivery systems. So when it comes to terminology, you won't hear youth saying e-cigarettes. You're going to hear more of that vaping language or mods when it comes to vaping. Nicotine in the brain. Nicotine is a very interesting drug that has a unique effect on the developing youth brain. Youth brain, we know, is more susceptible to nicotine because of that prefrontal cortex that is doing a lot of developing at this time. And nicotine the brain is very sensitive to nicotine at this point, which makes the chances that someone that becomes addicted much quicker to nicotine, and they have much more intense withdrawal symptoms. So the reaction of nicotine in the brain is really that stimulation of pleasure centers. When inhaled, the nicotine passes from the lungs through the body and through that brain barrier within 7 to 8 seconds. And when you think about it, 7 to 8 seconds to start having that release of feel-good chemicals is a very desirable effect of anyone seeking any drugs. So we do know that inhaling is the quickest way to absorb a drug into our systems. Well, nicotine is also a highly, highly addictive substance. People who vape become addicted to that nicotine that is present in nearly all vaping products. And because that brain is developing and that is that experimental stage, these nicotine products and electronic vaping products all have high doses of nicotine that aren't necessarily labeled as containing as much nicotine they do. And that is really part of that regulation piece that we're trying to get in place. So when a person starts vaping, their brain is exposed to high amounts of nicotine, much more than someone would be getting in a combustible cigarette. With the vaping as well, it is meant to be a smooth breath in. So when you're saying that, when someone usually starts smoking cigarettes, combustible cigarettes are very, very abrasive, and they cause coughing and irritation from the first few uses. Well, with these vaping products, those reactions are not present. The chemical composition of these products is meant to give as smooth a delivery as possible with the highest dose of nicotine. And that really creates that dangerous area that people become addicted faster. And the people that become addicted quicker. Even if they've only tried these vaping products 2 to 3 times, youth under the age of 25 are so susceptible to that nicotine effect that they can be addicted to nicotine and experience withdrawal symptoms from 2 to 3 times using these products. And then when we talk withdrawal symptoms, even after a few uses, those withdrawal symptoms can be that strong craving, irritability, fatigue, headaches, sleeplessness, and difficulty concentrating. With that being said, the way that most people that become addicted to these products when they experience withdrawal symptoms, the way to relieve those withdrawal symptoms is to take more of that drug or nicotine back into their body. And that creates that perpetual cycle of use, withdrawal symptoms, use to alleviate those withdrawal symptoms. Next slide, please. All right. So when we're talking like current tobacco trends and we're looking at youth behavior surveys, we know as a fact that combustible cigarettes are going down. The use of youth using these products is going down, but we still have our LGBTQ population that are twice as affected by nicotine addiction than those not in that category. And a lot of what we realize with youth, that these nicotine products are used as a way to stimulate themselves mentally, but also as an anti-anxiety almost use. And it becomes that habitual tool to kind of grease those social, wheels, to get someone to feel really less anxious going into situations. And youth are using these, as they report, as a way to deal with stress, which is really sad when we think about it, and how easy that they get hooked into that cycle, thinking these products and nicotine alleviates their stress or helps manage. So as I say, with cigarettes and combustible use, we're doing well. The numbers are going down. Next slide. But our real concern are these electronic vaping devices out there. And we know as a fact that we're seeing in our community is being greatly impacted with it, as across the country. And while it's not combustible cigarettes, it's still the ingestion of large amounts of nicotine. And it's that nicotine that is the addictive piece of these products. And there is a lot of miseducation and marketing that was put out with vaping products that made these seem like they were safe. And the marketing was, these are a safer alternative to combustible cigarettes. Well, yes, because combustible cigarettes are one of the most deadly products out there. They kill 480,000 people in the United States alone every year. Well, so anything really compared to cigarettes is going to be a little bit safer, but it was that misleading marketing. These are still products that contain high amounts of nicotine and other chemicals that are not safe for ingestion. So while tobacco is going down, we are seeing a dramatic increase in people using these vaping products, and a lot of miseducation behind them that continues this use. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about vaping, it is not necessarily just nicotine vaping. We know that THC, which, as Kaitlyn said, is that psychoactive component that is found in cannabis, and the CBD, which is seen more as promoted as the healthier piece of these products. And when I say promoted, this is the marketing piece to it. So we know that youth are also vaping cannabis in high numbers. And you hear a lot of, but it's natural, it's safe. Well, this is the piece where we really need to educate ourselves. THC oils or CBD oils are not 100% natural. There are other chemicals that are used, such as propylene glycol and vegetable oil, which is vegetable glycol, that is used to actually thin out these products so that you are able to breathe it into your lungs and it becomes aerosolized. So while these products, the propylene glycol and vegetable oil, they're FDA approved, right? We know that they are safe to use in food and to be ingested. These thinning oils are not FDA approved to be breathing into your lungs, because your lungs are such a fine tissue. Think of it as a piece of bread, and you're breathing these hot oils in. It actually absorbs into the lungs, much like if you're at an Italian restaurant dipping your bread in olive oil and garlic. It absorbs right into the lung tissue. And that is not going anywhere once it's in your lungs. Butane is also used to separate out the, to make it a more concentrated form, I would say, of the product. That's a good way to say it. It separates out the other liquids that are found in the cannabis extraction. We know that butane is not something that should be put into your body, and it is actually found in quantities left over in the oils that people are vaporizing into their lungs. We also know that these devices heat up this oil product to very, very high amounts or high temperatures, which then are breathed into your lungs. So hot oil into the lungs, no matter what is in it, is never going to be healthy for your lungs. So when people are misled and say these are healthy, it was the marketing approach that was put out there that this is a safer form than smoking. And once again, we know breathing anything into our lungs is not a good idea, whether it is a burning chemical or it is a hot oil into our lungs. And that is a lot of our education piece that still needs to come along, especially when it comes forth with prevention. We have a lot of misconceptions that we need to help correct and get that information out there as well. Kaitlyn, can you do the next slide, please? Our biggest concerns out there too are that when it comes to the marijuana, THC, and CBD vaping, these are highly unregulated products. There is really no control or guidelines for the manufacturer or grower to have to achieve. There's no consistency in testing products and consistency. And it's incredibly difficult to know what is in the product that you are getting, especially when people are using black market. And when I say that, these are the vaping products and cartridges that are bought off the streets. We do not know what is in these products. We do not know who prepared these products. And we don't know what they're thinning these products down. And prior to COVID, there was quite a few cases of people getting these products that was causing detrimental issues to their lungs. And we did have several people cross country that lost their life due to these black market products and the damage that they did on their lungs, which we were calling EVALA, if you saw that around. So there's no consistency in these products, and bottom line, it's breathing hot oil into our lungs. So one of our steps that we take with prevention is really educating parents about these products, educating parents to keep these products out of the reach of their youth and teens around them, to send a consistent message that these aren't safe products out there. And, you know, while people aren't smoking, this is still not a safer approach to getting these products in their body, and putting out resources to help those that already are addicted to the THC in these products or the nicotine. So Kaitlyn and I are doing some effort to update our Partners for Prevention website, which is partnersforprevention802.org. And we are keeping a list of the resources to help those youth and adults that are affected by nicotine addiction from vaping products. We have included resources to help educate yourselves, your community, your family on the dangers of these. And we will continue to update our website as a resource for the community for those that are affected. Kaitlyn, I see the next slide. I am done, and we are moving on to that help and resource page. I will let you have it.
Thanks, Sarah. So I know we've given you a lot of information, and some of it can kind of be saddening and frustrating, but we really want to leave you on a positive note of how can you affect change, how can you help, and the resources out there to support. So right now we'd like you to brainstorm some ideas and write in the chat the ways that you can help with prevention and just kind of overall supporting the community. So I'll give you just a few minutes for that. And then if Sarah and Sarah could monitor the chat and report out some of the responses.
So one right away is providing accurate information, which is great. Thank you.
Definitely. Any others?
Yeah, so they're coming in now, giving youth alternative
Perfect.
activities to do. So it makes me think of what's happening at Allen Street campus with their bike track. Most kids do not know what they need to know. Very true. Like, agreed. Open conversation. So really having that open dialogue, and we shouldn't expect our youth to understand everything. So they go hand in hand, like just educating, giving them more information.
Definitely. Yeah, you guys are right on track with that. So Sarah Cosgrove actually put together a brief list of, again, like you said, knowing the facts, really using that correct information to educate so that there's no kind of that mismarketing that Sarah talked about. Having those open conversations, again, not in a punitive way, but to really understand why kids are doing it and provide positive alternatives, like Sarah Roy said, with the awesome third space opportunities at Allen Street campus, for one example. And then it's also important too to know some of those resistance skills and ways to say no, so that in a moment of peer pressure or uncomfortableness, they know how to say no and can kind of walk away and move on. So again, one more thing, parents and adults are, the role models for our youth and young adults. And so another big way that you can affect change is by modeling responsible use of your substances. So not only with cannabis or alcohol, but also taking medications from the doctor as prescribed, storing them, and again, having other gatherings together that don't necessarily only revolve around substances like alcohol. So we are going to do a quick knowledge check just to see where you're at after all of this information we threw at you. Okay, we're just going to give it a few more seconds. Looks like about all of our responses are in. Awesome. So you guys hit the nail on the head. So alcohol is a depressant. That's true. The terms cannabis and marijuana do not mean the same thing. And it is difficult to know what is in vaping products. So now we're going to just move into if you all have any questions for the three of us. And then Sarah Roy is going to put in the link, the evaluation form. If you guys would fill that out and give us some feedback on how we did today, that would be awesome. So opening it up for questions. Feel free to write it in the chat or unmute yourself.
This isn't really a question, but when I have conversations with students and I go into the classes in various, age groups, cannabis doesn't really mean anything to them. They don't understand that it's still pot, it's still marijuana. They don't get that. So there's a lot of learning to do in that regard. They don't know what they need to know is what I had said. So that's a tough one. That's a challenge because they're not going to change that slang right now. It's not what they understand, so.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Absolutely. And I think it's overall kind of not just for youth, but I mean, I know adults also who I sometimes slip up and use them interchangeably. So I think it's that whole greater shift of language to all be on the same page. So thank you, Betty.
And Betty, that might be one that takes decades to shift. If we want to get to like everybody uses cannabis, it takes, from the state, we've gone back and forth for the last 2 decades on which to use. So we don't expect everybody to use the same words.
Well, it's good to know. So they understand. But you're right, I think it's going to take a long time.
Any other questions, comments?
There was just another person put in no questions, but love if we could share the links again. And Kaitlyn will definitely share this presentation out as a PDF after for people.
Definitely. So we'll go over, these are just some of the references. So again, this will be included when I send the PDF out after we end this presentation. If you could fill out the evaluation link that Sarah put in the chat box, that would be great. And if you have any follow-up questions, concerns, comments, you're welcome to contact myself, Sarah Cosgrove, or Sarah Roy, and all of our contact information is here. So again, we really appreciate everyone coming to this presentation, and we look forward to seeing your feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.